Hello, my name is Ethan Parker, and I will be conducting an interview with my grandfather, Richard Arlen Fisher, today about his service in the U.S. Navy during the Vietnam War era. What year did you enlist in the Navy, and what years did you serve?
I originally enlisted in November of 1955, and I served until September of 1969, and then I got out and had another career path for several years. Then I went back into the Navy in 1987 as a recruiter, and then I retired from that in officially January of 1995.
Okay.
So I had a total of 25 years service.
All right. Next question. What was your involvement in the Vietnam conflict?
Well, that's interesting because the Vietnamese conflict, I was on what you call a gunfire support ship, which was a low draft ship, the USS Waddell. It was a guided missile destroyer escort, and it was able to get in close to the shore and also up in the rivers to provide naval gunfire support for the troops. So in doing that, we would be fired on from the VC or Viet Cong from the shoreline, and then we would get coordinates from the troops in the country further, and they would direct our fire where we had to shoot our big guns, and whether it be on the beach or further in.
Okay. What type of ship were you on, and what was it designed to do?
Well, the ship I was on, as I said, was a guided missile destroyer escort, which is a small ship. In the Navy, you go like a harbor tug, fleet tug, minesweeper. Then you go to your smaller craft beyond the minesweeper, and then the next ship up is, of course, the destroyer escort, and then the regular destroyer. Then from the destroyer, you go to a cruiser, then to a battleship, and then an aircraft carrier. Okay. So it was a little ship.
All right. What other foreign ports did you visit during your time in the Navy?
I visited several. As a matter of fact, the Waddell was home ported in Japan, Yokosuka, Japan. We'd operate out of there, go down on the line for about 3 months, come back in to replenish supplies, and would head back down on the front line again. Besides that port, which was our main port, we would visit Hong Kong, Singapore, Taiwan, which was, at the time, Formosa. So we visited several different ports in that era.
All right. Did you ever receive poor treatment upon returning home based on your service during the Vietnam War?
Yeah, that's a sore subject with me because unlike today, where every returning service member is given the hurrah, we were just the opposite. We were called baby killers, and we were spit on. And I remember when I first got out, originally in '69 and came back, Vietnam was real heavy at that time. And unfortunately, we had had some atrocities occur with some Army personnel, and it was being taken out on the veterans returning home. So, yeah, it was not a very pleasant experience.
All right. What are some technological advancements you witnessed during your service in the Navy?
Well, during my career in the Navy, well, one thing was we went from the old standard mimeograph machine to a more modern printing method. We also went from standard typewriters to computers. So there was a lot of technology involved. We also went from standard weapons aboard ship to missiles. As a matter of fact, when President Kennedy had the Cuban Missile Crisis and told Khrushchev either get the missiles out of Cuba or we were going to retaliate, the ship I was on then was the USS Mayhem, DLG-11, which was a guided missile frigate, which was about the same size as a destroyer. And we were sent to Cuba for that expedition. And so there's been a lot of technology from then until now. Now they have ships now that where it used to take a crew of 500-600 men, they can operate them with 5 men.
Okay, so going on to some more questions about Vietnam. What was your job on the ship during the war?
Well, my specific battle station job, because see, in the Navy you have your professional job and then you have your military aspect of the job. And my particular job when general quarters, which is the alert to man your battle stations, was to be the captain, the commanding officer of the ship's talker on the bridge up where the ship is steered from and everything.
Okay.
So that's what I did. So that was my main function. So when he would tell me to tell the guns to fire, then I would tell the guns to fire.
All right.
Okay, so any command that he would give, I would relay to the stations that I had to relay it to, whether it be the engine room, the gun mounts, the missile room, whatever, combat information center. I was the one that relayed that information, which is a very important job. You didn't dare mess it up, because if you messed it up, I'm sure the captain would be having a chat with you afterwards.
Okay. Did your ship ever take direct enemy fire?
Oh yeah, yeah. As a matter of fact, one day we were on support for the troops, and we were about maybe 300 yards from the shoreline, and we were providing naval gunfire support in just beyond the beach area. You see, your Viet Cong would dig tunnels. The tunnels were so mammoth that you could drive a truck through them, but you wouldn't know they were there, and they'd have some along the beach or in further into the country, and they would direct fire on those for us to blow those up. So many times we would go in for this and they would fire back at us. And this one occasion I was on the bridge and the VC fired back at us, and the shell came right into the bridge wing where I was standing with the commanding officer and the executive officer, and it hit the side of the bridge wing and it caused a bunch of shrapnel. And I ducked down, a piece of the shrapnel hit my helmet, my talker's helmet, and then the executive officer took a piece of shrapnel in the left or right shoulder. And he had a pretty serious injury as a result. So yes, we were fired on a lot of times. Okay. Another situation we had was on night fire. This is where we run with all the lights on the ship off, and we would take and make like a circle going in a half moon going in towards the beach. And we'd start our run, and as we'd make our run and straighten out, we would start firing our guns, and then we would come back this way again. And we would do that, 5 or 6 or 7 times, depending on the requirements of the spotters, the Army spotters and Marine spotters that was giving us coordinates. So this one night it was really pitch dark, and the moon, it was probably like a quarter of a moon, not very much, but we could see the beach. And of course, with our capabilities, we were able to determine by the coordinates through our Combat Information Center where we should be positioning those guns. And so we started this one run, and as we started it, it was our first one. As we started it and approached the beach and got parallel to the beach, all of a sudden a bank of lights, like in a football stadium, you know how they have the big lights at night? Only a bunch of them lit up the whole beach front, and it lit us up. And all we could see was fire coming at us. So the captain told him to hit flank speed, so I told the engine room hit flank speed, and we got on out of there. And so that was pretty scary as well. So that was just a couple of the experiences. What would happen when we do that gunfire support, they would in turn do a daily report to us, and then that report would be sent to the ship, and it would tell us how many casualties the enemy took and so forth. It was pretty hectic. Some nights you would go without sleep for, most I ever had I think was probably like about almost 4.5 days without any sleep. Maybe a catnip on the bridge, and I'd doze off, and they would bring us food up on the bridge, so we'd eat right on station. Many times also we'd do what you call underway replenishment at sea, where you'd pull alongside of another ship and you would shoot lines across, and then you would haul supplies back and forth to refuel the ship from an oiler. And we would have that evolution. I would also be on the bridge for that. And so in the combat area down there in Vietnam, if you were doing that type of a replenishment at sea and the enemy started firing at you, you'd have to have what you call an emergency breakaway. And that can be pretty scary because your ships are operating side by side, and sometimes you're no further than maybe 100 feet between the ships, and sometimes it could be closer. You had a line that stretched from ship to ship that would tell you how far apart you were. But there was one time we were doing that, and we were just off the beach. We thought we were pretty safe in that area, and it turned out that we weren't. So the commanding officer of the oiler that was replenishing our fuel called for a breakaway because he started taking on fire, so we had to break away. So those are just a few of the experiences. There was a lot of experiences. You go back and you think about that. Most people that have saw combat or any action like that in Vietnam are real hesitant to talk about it. Another situation, we had a friend of mine who was a boatswain first class. He was the commanding officer of one of those river patrol boats. Well, they used to come to our ship, and we'd give them some rest and recreation. We'd go out a little bit and have those guys take them out, and we'd have beer. And we'd have them have a beer party on the back of the ship, and they'd have steak and lobster. They thought that was great. Those guys deserve that, because in their particular positions, we'd put them back out. They'd get on the river patrol boats and go way into the river. Now our ship was a low draft ship, which meant we could get into that river pretty good, but we couldn't go all the way up there like a river patrol boat. Well, on one occasion, this friend of mine, who I went to boot camp with, as a matter of fact, he was on his boat, and he was headed up the river on assignment, on a mission, and he was, they'd just left our ship after getting some stuff from us, and he was going up the river, and we were almost right behind him, and all of a sudden he started taking on gunfire, and they blew up his boat and killed him and his crew. So people that's been there and saw a lot of this combat are very hesitant to talk about it because they don't like to have those memories come back. And then of course when we come back from Vietnam, and the treatment that we received from our fellow Americans was disastrous. Many veterans, I myself, live and let live and be gone and forgive and forget. But there are some veterans still around that do not care for the way they were treated back in that era. It was very difficult. Vietnam was a war that we could have won. We could have very easily won that war. But we had been put in a position that it became a political ball game. And I hate to see that, but that's exactly what occurred. The Republicans were blaming the Democrats were blaming the Republicans. Both sides were trying to do something to establish some foothold on the American people. And as a result of that, it was coming back onto the troops, which was unfortunate.
This concludes my interview with Chief Petty Officer Richard Fisher, U.S. Navy retired. Thank you for your time, and most of all, thank you for your service of 25 years in the Navy.
You're welcome.